Imagine two people standing on a starting line. On the left, you have someone we'll call the saver. He does everything right. He works hard, spends less than he earns, and puts the difference into a safe bank account. He sleeps well at night knowing he has zero debt. He is the model citizen. On the right, you have the borrower. She takes risks. She takes out loans she can barely afford today to buy assets she probably doesn't need yet. She carries a massive mortgage, a car loan, and business debt. By traditional standards, she looks reckless. Now, fast forward 10 years. You look at them again and something strange has happened. The saver is working harder than ever, but he feels poorer. His safe bank account hasn't moved much, but the cost of his life has doubled. He's frustrated. He feels like he's running on a treadmill that keeps speeding up. The borrower? She's rich. Her net worth has exploded. The debt that looked so scary 10 years ago now feels manageable, almost trivial. She didn't work harder than the saver. She didn't get a lucky lottery ticket. She simply positioned herself on the right side of an invisible force that quietly transfers wealth from one group to another every single day without a single vote being cast. That force is inflation, but not the way you usually hear about it. Usually, when we talk about inflation, we talk about the price of milk or gas. We complain that a coffee costs $5. We treat it like a nuisance, like bad weather. But that is missing the point entirely. Inflation isn't just prices going up, it is the value of money going down. And when the value of money goes down, the rules of the game change in a way that specifically punishes people who hold on to money and rewards people who owe it. This is the story of how that happens and why the entire modern financial system is practically designed to make sure debt is the most profitable asset you can own. To understand this, we have to stop looking at money as a solid object. We tend to think of a dollar bill like a brick. It's a fixed unit of measurement. If you have a stack of bricks, you have a stack of bricks. 10 years later, it's the same wall. But money isn't a brick. It's more like a block of ice. If the saver puts his block of ice in a vault and locks the door, he thinks he's being responsible. He comes back a year later and there's a puddle on the floor. The block is smaller. He still has one block, technically, but the substance is gone. Now, look at the borrower. When you borrow money, you are essentially shorting the currency. You're making a bet against the block of ice. Let's say you walk into a bank today and borrow $100,000 to buy a plot of land. You sign a contract. That contract is very specific. It says you must pay back $100,000 plus a little bit of interest over the next 30 years. The bank gives you the money. You give the money to the seller. You get the land. Now, freeze time. You have the asset, the land. The bank has the promise of paper money. 10 years go by. In those 10 years, the government prints trillions of new dollars to pay for wars or pandemics or infrastructure or bailouts. The supply of money expands. Because there is so much more paper floating around, each individual piece of paper is worth less. It buys less labor, less steel, less energy. Consequently, wages, eventually, go up. The price of milk goes up. The price of land goes up. But look at your loan contract. Does it say you now owe $200,000 because the value of money dropped? No, the number on the paper is fixed. It is frozen in time. You still owe the exact same number of dollars you borrowed 10 years ago. But those dollars are now much easier to get. Maybe 10 years ago, earning that $100,000 took you 5 years of hard labor. Today, because of inflation and wage increases, maybe it only takes you 3 years. You are paying back a debt that was heavy in the past with money that is light in the present. You borrowed valuable, rare dollars and you are paying back cheap, common dollars. The gap between the value you took and the value you return is your profit. And the bank? They're the ones holding the melting ice cube. This is why, historically, during periods of high inflation, the middle class gets crushed, while those with massive fixed-rate debt, like real estate investors or corporations, tend to come out ahead. But wait, if this is so obvious, why would a bank ever lend you money? Banks aren't stupid. They employ thousands of mathematicians and risk analysts. They know about inflation. This brings us to the concept of the real interest rate. When a bank sets an interest rate, they are trying to predict the future. They say, okay, we will charge you 5% interest. They are guessing that inflation will be 2%. If they're right, they make a 3% profit. That 3% is the real interest rate. But here's the trick. Here is where the system gets murky. Predicting the future is impossible, and often inflation spikes much higher and much faster than the interest rates can catch up. Imagine you locked in a 30-year mortgage 3 years ago at 3% interest. That was the rate. Then, suddenly, inflation hits 7, 8, or 9%. Do the math. You are paying the bank 3% for the privilege of using their money, but the money itself is losing value at 8%. The bank is effectively paying you to take their money. The real interest rate is negative. Every month you make that mortgage payment, you are technically getting richer. The house you bought has likely gone up in price, keeping pace with inflation, but the debt you owe has stayed flat. In real terms, the debt is shrinking. Inflation is eating your mortgage for you. This is a transfer of wealth from the lender, the bank, or the savers who put their money in the bank, to the borrower, you. Now, let's zoom out, because this isn't just about you and your mortgage. This mechanism is the exact same reason why governments love inflation, even if they pretend to hate it. Think about the national debt. Most major economies today are drowning in debt, trillions upon trillions of dollars, numbers that don't even make sense to the human brain. If you tried to pay off the United States national debt by paying $1 per second, it would take tens of thousands of years. Honest politicians, if that existed, would look at that debt and say, we have two choices. Choice one, we default. We tell the people who bought our bonds, pension funds, foreign governments, grandmas with savings bonds, that we aren't paying them back. We declare bankruptcy. That is catastrophic. It destroys the financial system instantly. No one trusts the currency anymore. The economy collapses. So choice one is off the table. Choice two, we pay it back honestly. We raise taxes significantly and we cut spending significantly. We live within our means for 50 years until the balance sheet is clean. But that is political suicide. No politician gets re-elected by raising taxes and cutting services. If you tell the public their taxes are going up by 20% and you're canceling their retirement benefits to pay off a debt from 20 years ago, you will be voted out tomorrow. So they can't default and they can't pay it back. That leaves a third door. The hidden door. Inflation. It's known in economics as financial repression. Here is how it works. The government borrows huge amounts of money. Then the central bank, which works closely with the government, keeps interest rates lower than the rate of inflation, or they print money to buy the government's debt, injecting new cash into the system. This causes inflation. Now, remember the borrower we talked about earlier? The one whose debt got lighter because the currency got cheaper? The biggest borrower in the world is the government. By allowing inflation to run hot, say 4 or 5% for a decade, the real value of that massive national debt melts away. They still owe the same number of trillions, but those trillions are worth half of what they used to be. The tax revenues they collect, which rise with inflation, make the debt payments easier to handle. They are effectively taxing you without passing a tax law. Every year that your savings lose purchasing power, that value is being transferred to the government to service its debt. It is a silent tax. It happens while you sleep. It happens while you work. You don't see a deduction on your pay stub, you just notice that you can't afford a house anymore. This creates a perverse incentive structure. If the government fixes inflation, if they truly made the currency rock solid and prices stable, their debt would become impossible to pay. They would collapse. So, the system is biased toward inflation. The arrow is pointing in one direction. They need the currency to lose value. They need the borrower to win because they are the borrower. But there is a catch. There is always a catch. This game rewards borrowers, yes, but it rewards a specific type of borrower. It rewards the borrower who buys assets. If you borrow money to go on a vacation, or to buy a car that depreciates, or to buy clothes, inflation doesn't help you much. You still have the debt, but you don't have an asset that is rising in value to offset it. You just have a hole in your pocket. The magic only happens when you use the debt to buy something that cannot be printed. Real estate, stocks, gold, fine art, a business. These are hard assets. When the ocean of printed money floods the world, these assets rise like ships. The saver, standing on the dock with his pockets full of cash, watches the ships float away. He drowns. The borrower, who is on the ship, rises with the tide. This is why wealth inequality explodes during high inflation. It splits society into two groups, those who own assets and those who sell their labor for cash. If you sell your labor, if you work for a wage, you are always chasing. Inflation happens first. Prices go up at the grocery store today. Your landlord raises the rent next month, but your boss, he might give you a raise next year if you're lucky, and that raise will probably be less than the inflation rate. Wages are sticky. They move slowly. Prices are fluid. They move instantly. In that gap between prices going up and wages catching up, the worker loses. But the asset owner? They profit instantly. If you own an apartment complex, you can raise rents immediately. If you own stocks, the market adjusts expectations in real time. So the lesson the system teaches us is dangerous. It teaches us that saving is for suckers. It teaches us that being prudent, cautious, and debt-free is actually a risk. Think about how twisted that is. For thousands of years, cultural wisdom has been save for a rainy day, neither a borrower nor a lender be, live within your means. But in a fiat currency system designed to inflate, that wisdom is mathematically wrong. If you live within your means and save cash, you are guaranteed to lose. You are betting on a losing horse. To preserve your wealth, you are forced to become an investor. You are forced to take risks. You can't just put money in a jar. You have to put it into the stock market, or the housing market, or crypto, or something, anything that might outrun the money printer. This turns the entire population into speculators. We see this today. Why are 16-year-olds trading options on their phones? Why is everyone obsessed with the housing market? Why does every dinner conversation turn to investment strategies? Because we intuitively know that our money is melting. We are all scrambling to get rid of the cash and get into the assets. This creates bubbles. When everyone runs to the same side of the boat, when everyone tries to buy houses to hedge against inflation, the price of houses disconnects from reality. It's not that the house is suddenly worth 10 times more utility, it's just that there is too much money chasing too few hard assets. So what happens when the music stops? If the central bank decides to fight inflation, really fight it, they have to raise interest rates above the rate of inflation and keep them there. They have to turn off the money printer. When that happens, the easy game ends. The borrower who looked like a genius when rates were zero suddenly looks like a fool. If you have a variable rate loan, your payments explode. If you need to refinance, you can't. The asset prices, which were propped up by cheap debt, come crashing down. This is the liquidation phase. This is the recession. This is the hangover after the party. But here is the cynical truth that history teaches us. The government usually doesn't have the stomach for the hangover. When the pain gets too real, when the stock market crashes, when unemployment spikes, the central bank panics. They pivot. They cut rates. They turn the printer back on. And the cycle starts all over again. So where does that leave you? It leaves you in a world where the rules are unwritten but strictly enforced. Rule 1, cash is trash. It is a medium of exchange, not a store of value. Use it to buy things, don't use it to store wealth for decades. Rule 2, good debt is a tool. Bad debt is slavery. Debt used to buy appreciating assets in an inflationary environment is a subsidy. Debt used to buy consumption is slavery. Rule 3, the game is rigged to favor the house. The house is the government and the banking sector. They are net debtors. They will always favor inflation over deflation in the long run. Bet accordingly. It sounds depressing, doesn't it? It sounds like the system is broken. And perhaps it is. A system that requires constant exponential growth of money supply just to keep from collapsing is inherently unstable. But you cannot change the wind. You can only adjust your sails. The saver who stands on the shore shaking his fist at the waves will get wet. The borrower who builds a boat might survive. But there is a lingering question, a shadow hanging over this whole arrangement. If the winning strategy is to borrow as much as possible and let inflation pay it off, and if everyone, including the government, adopts this strategy, eventually the currency itself becomes meaningless. If money is just a hallucination that keeps shrinking, at what point do people stop accepting it? At what point does the person selling the house or the land or the bread say, "No thanks, I don't want your paper anymore. I want something real"? That is the moment the game changes entirely. That is the moment that the debt doesn't matter because the unit of account has failed. We aren't there yet. We might not be there for a long time, but every time the printer whirs to life, every time a saver is punished and a borrower is bailed out, we inch a little bit closer to that edge. Until then, the treadmill is running, the saver is sweating, the borrower is smiling, and the invisible tax collector is taking his cut from everyone without anyone noticing. So look at your own finances. Look at your debts and look at your assets. Are you positioned for a world where money holds its value, or are you positioned for the world we actually live in? Because whether you like it or not, you are playing the game. The only choice you have is whether you play to win or play to be the liquidity for someone else.